basically, as a sacral generator, this is the first thing that I'm kind of hearing. I'm also a sacral generator. So I have only my G center and my sacral defined. So I totally get the aura and the way of being with this kind of energetic imprint. So your strategy is you're meant to respond, right? It's wait to respond. But what I feel like isn't emphasized enough is that it's about waiting to respond to your environment. What is coming up in your environment? Is somebody saying something to you and be like, hey, Cindy, do you want to do this? Or hey, do you want to do that? Or what do you think about this? And then you're responding to that. What I notice, what a lot of people do when they're still learning how to embody their human design, especially as a sacral being, is they respond to their ideas. They're like, oh, that's a really good idea. I did this all last year in my business. I launched like 9 different things. No one signed up because I was responding to my ideas. I wasn't co-creating with my environment. And so right now, when I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing is like, oh, I think I should do this and I could do that. And it's like you're having this conversation with yourself, okay? But then where I'm hearing the switch is when you start talking about how you want to coach parents. You're like, I can see how they can help their kids. I can see how they can work with their toddlers, like, but then you have this doubt of like, who am I to coach them when I don't have any kids? But the thing is, and this is what intuitively came to me when I was listening to you, was they have their kid, you have all of them. You see kids from all walks of life, from all different families, like, not to like, basically you could say you in theory have more experience with kids and their development because that's the environment that you're in there with, right? And it's like, I feel like as a parent, it's like they're raising their child. Like they have a very like systemic of like how they're going to do things. They have their routines at home, but then you're in an environment where you literally see their cognition developing, right? And so it's very different. And so that is obviously the wisdom that you bring to your parents. And there's things that you're going to see that they're not. Like, for example, you don't know this, but I'm hearing impaired. I wear hearing aids. I'm wearing headphones right now, but my parents didn't know until I was 5 and I was in school because the teacher saw it. I mean, ironically, they saw it. They could tell that I was hearing impaired. So they could see things that my parents could see because they had more awareness because they're with kids all the time.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's the wisdom that you're going to bring. Like, you're not going to know everything, obviously, but it would be like me coming onto this call and being like, okay, I'm going to do a reading for Cindy. I don't know anything about early childhood education. I'm not really going to be able to help her, but my expertise is like, I know human design and I've talked about human design with many different people. So therefore, I'm just going to come with what I know to work with her.
Yeah.
So you could take that same context and apply it to how you can work with parents. Because like energetically, I feel this. And one of the things too, just to kind of bring it back to the chart. So your splenic center, this is the center of intuition. This is a center of safety and security and like your fear centers of knowing like what's best for you. And you have a lot of activation in here. So how I see that is that you have a lot of intuitive gifts. And then you also have quite a bit of activation in your sacral center. And the sacral center is like life force energy. It's about doing the things that lights you up, being creative, right? So this and that connection to the spleen is like there's a lot of creative energy and intuition. And I feel like that's something that is like waiting to be unleashed. And if you're feeling frustrated, it's just because you're not responding to your environment, you're responding to your ideas, or you're just not allowing yourself to do the things that you want to do that light you up.
So what does that mean, responding to environment versus ideas?
So let's say, for example, when I was talking about earlier, where you're like, I really want to coach parents. And it's because that's an example of responding to the environment because you're seeing in the environment, like, hey, like I can see how, these kids behave in this situation and how that can benefit and me bringing that to the parents. Right. And, I can see how, this sort of, communication with this child at this time can help with this, right? Like you're seeing things in your environment. Whereas when you're sitting, and for example, I'm not saying that journaling is a bad thing. I do it every day. When you're sitting with your journal and you're like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I created this, if I would like get this engagement. Like, I feel like that's a good idea because I have the skill set for it, but you're kind of like fabricating this situation in your head rather than looking at what's directly in your environment that you could co-create with.
Right.
Undefined centers are like what we call like wisdom portals. Okay. So you might see online, and I say it in this part empowering context because you might see online like, oh, if you don't have definition, you're going to have more conditioning and, you don't have your inconsistent energy. That's not true. At least I say it's not true.
Yeah.
So your undefined or open centers are where you pick up energy from your environment, from other people. So if you're picking up different flavors of energy, you're going to have a lot of wisdom there. Okay. And so the head center is like it's a pressure center, and it's where you receive all of your ideas from your external environment or even from within yourself. But it's really when it's in alignment, you're going to be like very inspired by what it is that you're doing. When you're out of alignment, it's like, oh my God, I need to get the answers for this. I need to figure this out right now. Once I figure this out, then my head will like, I'll literally feel more clear headed. Like it's this drive to find answers. Okay. And then with the ajna, so right underneath the head center, this center is about your perceptions, your beliefs, how you piece together the information and the inspiration that you receive. So this center really likes to look for certainty. So it's like, oh, I need to find certainty. I need to find the answer so that I know what I know and that people know that I know what I'm talking about so that I can feel certain, right? So that's kind of like the not self theme. So what I'm saying is that the gifts of this is that there's many different ways that you can be inspired with the head center. And then with the Ajna center, it's like there's many different ways that you can, that you can conceptualize and have beliefs and perceptions. And like, so this openness and also having an undefined throat is really going to allow you to be fluid the way that you think, the way that you're self-expressed. This is why, you talk about the comedian work that you want to do and how you feel like a goof with kids is because you have this openness to be self-expressed in this way. And then also just to come down into the G center, because I'm kind of on a roll here, the 10th, gate 10 is about the gate of self-love. And it's about the gate of like oneself, like the behavior of self that is best for you. So that's the only gate that you have defined in your G center, but like that's going to be a consistent energy that you're going to be sharing because you have that consistently defined within you. So gate 56 in the throat center, this gate is known as like the storytelling gate. And so your ability to tell stories and share information is really natural, right? And it's like the highest expression of this gate is what they call intoxication. So obviously from an empowering context and just like really being able to self-express that. This is also your conscious sun. So your conscious sun energy is like your main personality energy. This is how you see yourself. This is how others will see you in this energy. And the 5 line, so you being a 5-2 generator, the 5 line is about you being like a mentor, being someone who can see solutions, being someone who can help others, leadership, that kind of energy. So that's what you're like, that's the leadership energy that you're bringing. And then you have a very unique way of expressing that through that gate 56 of storytelling.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's useful, but let's say just by looking at my chart, what careers like would you say were good for me?
So in theory, you can do anything that you want. I'm never going to look at someone's chart and say, oh, you should be this, you should be that. But the fact that like what you're sharing with me around wanting to coach parents and your creative goofy side, like those are yeses. I know that if you asked your sacral, is this a yes for me that I want to do stand up? Is this a yes for me that I want to coach parents? Like full stop, not like, oh yes, but, because then you start to get into the head and the ajna and you're like figuring it out and you want certainty. Just full stop. Is this what I want to do? Yes or no? Those things you're telling me, but I can hear in the background the doubt that's coming up.
Right.
So, and it's like when I say that anyone can do anything, what I mean is that you literally can do anything. It's the way that you're going to do it will be unique to you based off of your energetic imprinting and how you're designed to show up in the world.
Yeah.
So I think that's what people think. They think, oh, I need to, if I want to do this thing, I have to be a certain way, or this thing requires a certain person, but ultimately you can do whatever. It's just how you do it will be different than how I would do it, or how, a family member would do it or a coworker and so on. So so first thing I want to address, this is kind of just like a coaching thing. So I was blessed to be taught this when we look at the coaching industry. Like, for example, I don't see very many parent coaches on the online space, but that's just because that's not my neck of the woods, right? So obviously what you're into, you're going to see the most of. I see a ton of human design coaches on the interwebs, but that's literally because it's what I do, right? So this story, quote, I put this in quotations, of competition in the online space. The thing is, I don't believe in competition because the way that you will coach parents will not be the same as how somebody else does it, and vice versa. Therefore, it's like you have your own little parking spot where you get to pull in and like open your trunk and be like, this is what I have for you. And no one else can compete with that because there's nothing to compete with. It's not the same thing. Totally. And one of the next things I'm going to talk about, so in terms of like being in confidence, so we're talking about the heart center here. So this center, it's known as the heart center, the ego center, the will center. So that's just so that if you hear these names in the future, you know it's the same thing. This center is about your worthiness, your willpower and drive, your desires, and like accomplishing material things in life. So when this is undefined, what that means is that you're going to be more fluid in the way that you deem something valuable, in the way that you decide what your desires are. Like there's just going to be more fluidity in that. The way that you commit to things, you might notice that, you know, for a chunk of time you commit to a lot of things and then later you commit to less things, and that's just how it's meant to be. It doesn't mean somebody with a defined heart is better because they have more sustainable energy. It's literally like, if you've heard about it, sacral centers, everyone goes off about the sacral center. They're like, oh my God, you have this consistent energy, you're go, go, go all the time. And it's like, kind of, but you need to be doing what you love, otherwise you burn out. Right. So it's like with the undefined center, the undefined heart center, one of the shadow side of this is this desire, or this feeling, not desire, to prove oneself. Oh, what is that person doing? How much are they charging? What's their coaching like? How can I be like this? How can I do this so that blah, 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 right? And we like, because it's undefined, we go and we like pick up this worthiness and this value from outside of ourselves, but then it's not actually sustainable. It's a lack of integrity, and we're just going to burn out.
Totally.
Right. So I'm sharing this because this is something that I was actually talking about on a podcast episode I recorded this morning. With the undefined heart center, the best thing you can do is, instead of like looking at your neighbor and being like, you know, looking over the fence, checking out their grass, like how green is it over there? Like looking in your own backyard and being like, okay, this is my experience with kids. This is my experience with early childhood education. This is my experience with parenting. This is my skill set of having this like witchy clown, like, you know, just aura where I get to be funny, and I also love nature, and I want to bring this to the kids and the families. Like, this is what I'm doing, right? And you deciding that that's valuable and looking at how you can showcase that in your own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is how you will create a sustainable confidence. And here, just to kind of go back a little bit to address, like, you know, you just can't see the possibility of all of this, is that you just need to know the next step. Like, really, you just need to know the next step, because every step is the foundation to the bigger picture. And I literally can't emphasize this enough, because 3 years ago when I started my coaching business, I didn't know what the F I was doing. I didn't, like, at all. And it was literally just like one step at a time. Then all of a sudden I look back, I'm like, wow, there's a whole freaking like pathway here from Sarnia. Like, what is this? Right. And so I think that that's really important too, is that it's really easy to get overwhelmed by the whole picture, but like, you're not going to create the whole picture overnight. Like, that's never possible. Even when we see things online and somebody's like, oh, it was an overnight success, like went from 0 to 6 figures in 5 minutes, like whatever. It's like, okay, you don't know what happened behind that. They might have attempted and failed 3 different businesses. They might have been, you know, gone to business school. They might have whatever. Like, there's so much that we don't know. There's always going to be a foundation, right? So I think that that's really important as well, is like, you only have to know the next step.